Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself. And if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So, on that note, let's dive right in. There we
There
go.
we go.
That works. How's it
I was
going?
like, wait a minute. I'm just trying to make it, living life.
Yeah, I understand. It's cool to be finally talking. I realized I had a call yesterday with someone as well who I've met on Facebook, and it was our first time talking like this, which is not quite in real life, but still. But it's just kind of fun to feel like I know you already, even though we met online and have developed a connection kind of solely in that space. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I internet friends was definitely something that was a newer concept for me.
Mm-hmm.
But with the pandemic, it was unavoidable to
Yep.
like and then especially as I've come into like my spiritual journey,
Mm.
now this now it's like, oh, I have lots of internet friends.
Yeah, it's funny too because which I mean we'll get into, but these conversations can go all over the place. From when I was more explicitly coaching, I had a huge friends list because my mentor at the time had the approach of like add all these people, have them see your stuff, blah blah blah, which personally felt not super awesome, but it did mean that I made some really cool friends that way. But in the spring, my friends list had grown to like 1,700 people, and I wasn't engaging with those people. They weren't seeing my content. Like it just seemed like for lack of better terms, seemed kind of pointless, to be honest with you, because like there's nothing
Yeah.
meaningful happening here. So I went through a bit of a purge, and I actually got my list down to like 600. I'm looking at right now, 662 from 1,700.
That's pretty impressive, especially because I know that Facebook does not have that multi-click and
No,
delete.
it was one at a time, and to be completely honest, there was like messaging to suss out what kind of connection it could be if I had not yet talked to the person. Like there was a spreadsheet involved. There were like different types of messages depending on how we connected. Like it was a whole ordeal. And then eventually I got to where I was like, fuck it. And I just like deleted a whole bunch of people. But it feels good because like even though my list is quite big now, if I scroll through it, I don't have anyone on there where I don't know how I know them. So that's nice.
Right.
And
Yeah.
majority of them are engaging in my content or we talk or whatever. So yeah.
That is nice. Yeah. I did my own purge as I started my spiritual journey, and I was like, you're toxic, you're toxic, you're but I only had like 400 to go through, but I brought it down to like 150, and I was like,
Wow.
some of y'all are still I'm just not a huge Facebook person, like that's not my
Platform of
I
choice.
don't know. Yeah, and that's the platform that my mom is most active on, and I'm like, I don't need to engage with her. So
I mean, yeah, I've had that too. People often laugh because, like, well, you've seen my presence on Facebook, and like anyone watching this who knows me from like the group and stuff knows that like I'm pretty candid in my approach to everything. And so it's kind of funny because I did that post recently where it's like, what object do you see and automatically think of me? And multiple people said butt plug. And like my mom sees this. So it's just like, sorry, mom. But you know what? We need to like normalize sex positivity. And so I'm a grown ass woman. I'm not going to share anything too in their face, but like it's not a bad thing if they know that I, explore whatever, as long as it's within a respectful realm, is kind of how I keep it. That's why my like memes folder is private.
yeah, I think my mom would keel over and die. It was enough for her when I came out as gay, so like we're just not trying to push it there.
It's reasonable. Yep. And I feel like my parents had probably overlooked a couple of things themselves because it's just like not for them, but it has opened up some actually like good conversations, and like because now I have my niece, and so like she's 7 or 8, and she's like she's learning about consent and how to like advocate for her needs. And so having me show up like pretty open about it in that way is important for her as she's engaging, or like my mom sees that and then can relay information. You know what I mean? So I kind of
Mhm.
keep it to things that are more along those lines, not trying to like push too many boundaries, at least not with them. Yeah. um,
Yeah, I totally get that.
yeah. um, but yeah, I don't know. I really would like to hear, because I think I did a card pull for you somewhat recently.
Mhm.
And that was around the time where you were kind of like going through some stuff to do with the transition to now your coaching and like following that spiritual pull that you're alluding to. And if you're open to sharing, I'd really like to hear about like what got you to take that step, because it can look so different for different people. And I know my story with the group, and I can share that a bit, but yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it was different. It was actually with COVID. It had to do with COVID, and it had to do with a promotion that I had just gotten. So my wife and I just relocated in 2020 to DFW. Um, it was crazy because we moved literally 8 days before the world shut down.
Oh my God. No, but what area are you in? Sorry.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay. Sorry.
Texas.
Canada here. So I'm like,
I just
yeah.
I assume everyone knows what DFW
No,
is because of the, but I forget that not
I
everyone's in the
just
United
learned
States.
how to pronounce the word Southern. So like, because okay, we don't use that word here. We would say like South, but we wouldn't say Southern. And so
Oh,
I pronounced it as I read it, which was Southern, and apparently that is very wrong. Um, and like
bless
I
your heart.
thank you.
Someone needs to get you some biscuits and gravy.
I know, right? I mean, if they're gluten free, I'll take it. But
I know how to make gluten-free biscuits and gravy.
so
I
I'm coming to
do.
visit you whenever I can travel down to the States again. All right. But okay, this helps. Context, Texas. We're talking
Yes,
Texas.
so sorry,
Okay.
Texas.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. um, so basically we relocated to a metropolitan area in Texas
Mhm.
from a very um conservative town. In fact, it was so conservative that they had the highest, and I don't mean to get political, but this is the way that you can describe the
That's
town.
allowed. Yeah.
They had the highest per capita vote for Trump in the entire United States of America.
So a great place to be when you're into spiritual explorations and gay.
Yes, wonderful. Like the prime place to
Yeah.
be.
Sounds like a party. Okay.
Super big party. Yes, super great. And it was all part of our journey and it was great. But anyway, so we relocated and I kind of hesitantly took this job for money. I was like, I need the money, so we're gonna do it. Let's do it. And we'll get out of this place. Like we've been trying to get out of here for 7 years. We got to get out.
Yeah.
This is our opening. So my wife quit her job. We came over here. COVID happened. The world shut down.
Great timing. Yeah.
They were like, oh yeah, your training, you're not gonna have any of it. And all of this other stuff, you're not gonna have. This is a brand new job. I understand. I was running a multi-million-dollar store with no training.
Great.
Yeah, it was perfect for the very first time. Had never done that before. Brand new team. It was great. Everything was awesome. And then the world shut down and people are getting furloughed. And with retail, a lot of people got furloughed. From the company that I was in, 80,000 people got furloughed. And I was this close. Like we thought I was going to get furloughed too, because of my store location. I got in through a technicality and it was just like crazy. So that was the start of this job. And then, flash forward a month later of reopening, because Texas was one of the first states to reopen after lockdown.
Yep.
Yeah. So we opened the second weekend and I sat in my office and I bawled my eyes out and I was like, I can't do this. This isn't for me. Like, we're not doing this anymore. 3 months after starting my job.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just it. So at that time, I was talking with a friend I'd been connected to through a program I was doing, who lived in Texas and was a teacher. And I think schools opened later, just depending on the time frame of the year. But it was kind of similar where it's like they're forcing us to go back. They're not providing any of the cleaning supplies, any of the stuff to keep us safe. Like it's scary. It was really scary. So yeah.
Yeah, it was frightening. I'm so sorry. That is my dog, and I created him
Oh,
so
it's
we
fine.
wouldn't
Don't
do
worry.
this.
My cat will be all over the place knocking stuff off tables. You're fine.
Yeah, I've got 3, and I think 2 have already followed me in here.
This is real life. Don't even worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, had that moment
Mhm.
and was like, okay. And I was already a very big personal development nut, like very big. I'm a 5'1" in human design, and I live that one line up. Like,
Can you explain that?
yes. So human design is a system based off of Chinese theory. Like, there's some like energy theories and psychology, rave psychology. I don't know all the history yet. I'm still like diving into it. But basically, you have a profile, and that kind of like, I don't want to say dictates your personality, but it kind of like explain. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
kind of
like
like
astrology doesn't dictate your life, but it can give you a tool to move through it. Yeah.
correct. And
Cool.
so, a 5'1" in human design, the 5 line is a mirror, so I mirror other people. They don't really see me properly,
Okay.
which I
Yeah.
was thinking about that earlier, and it made me laugh. Um, it can go different ways.
Okay. Have you read Sartre at all, the philosopher?
I feel like a little bit because of psychology.
Probably. So there's a play he wrote called Hell is Other People. I think that's what it's called. I think, or no, it's called No Exit, but the main line from it is Hell is Other People. And I feel like it kind of relates to that. And it's short, like it might be worth reading. I think I've recommended it to people before because it just really stuck with me. But okay, that's interesting to me. And what's
That
your
sounds accurate.
main thing? I'm a projector. I don't know the details, but I'm actually getting a reading on this channel soon, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Human design changed my life. I'm a generator. So I'm
Okay.
a 5'1" sacral generator. And I only have 2 defined centers in my whole body. So that's fun. I have lots of openness.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that's cool.
Yes. And my one line, is that piece that craves research and knowledge and all of this stuff. So I have always been that way. I'm a huge book reader. We've always joked in my family that I could win Jeopardy based off of useless facts and all of that stuff. Like, I'm just that kind of person. So um, because of everything that was going on, I was kind of like pulling back inside myself, and I was like, okay, what makes me feel better? Like, what makes me feel like I'm taking control when everything feels out of control? And work felt so out of control at that time. So
Mhm.
I was leaning into personal development, and then, landed down the Gabby Bernstein rabbit hole.
I've heard of this. I have not entered. Yeah.
She was my entrance into the spiritual world. I mean, I guess just because she's so readily available, it just kept
Mhm.
popping up everywhere.
Like, all right, I'll try
Um,
it. Yeah.
yeah, right. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll give it a try. And then, and that was in May of.
Okay.
I got her first book in November of 2019. Did not read it, just bought it.
I have a lot of those. Don't worry. Yeah.
So I didn't actually like lean into like, law of attraction and manifestation and all of that spiritual stuff until that moment in my job when I was like, okay, this isn't working. I've got to get something else. Um, and started an Instagram where I was just like, posting books I was reading and stuff. And that kind of just like, whoop, like from there, it was like into the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Oh, there's life coaching. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's this. And I told my former boss and mentor that I had worked with in the conservative town, who was a huge advocate for me, loved her to death. I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to quit my job. And she was like, are you like, can you just give it 6 more months? Like, just give it 6 more months. And I was like, I don't think I can give it 6 more minutes. Like, this is not going to work. Like, I can't. Like, I'm one of those people, like, once I make the decision, like, it's just done. And there's no point in sticking around because the choice has been made already. The irony there being that I stuck around for another 2 months, and then instead of a 2 weeks notice, I had a 7 weeks notice.
So it kind of ended up that way anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It did. And I left on the day of my 3-year anniversary. And then I was like, okay, I've told everyone I'm going to do this life coaching thing. And I had like started doing some programs to like learn more. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm only saying I'm doing life coaching because it's like more socially acceptable. I want to do spirituality stuff. That's what I want to do, you know? And it was kind of like a playing small kind of moment. And then I was like, okay, I have to challenge myself here. Like, this isn't actually what I want to do. Like, I want to do this, you know, going further down. And I connected with a woman who does. She's not in Australia. They call her Hot Jesus. She's fabulous. I love her so much.
Yeah.
She's a lady you just have to meet and then like you understand.
Yeah.
She is very in tune with Christ consciousness, and she divinely channels and activates what she calls your godhood. So like the piece of the divine in you from your divine soul that you were meant to do on this planet. And she gives you like extreme detail. It's super crazy. She goes through like 8 things and like tells you what you're going to do, what it's going to look like, how you're going to do it, how you're going to get more information for it, what the next 6 months is going to like. It is crazy detailed. It is amazing. So on the 11/11 portal, she did my activation.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, you're a soul guide actually. And I'm like,
I see a
a
cat.
what? Oh, yes. No, they're all 3 in here now.
Yeah.
I got one in the closet and one by the window and one trying to mess with the one by the window. But she was just like, you're a soul guide. Like you have an ability that is not really been seen on this planet yet. Like this is a new thing as we're coming into the age of Aquarius, like that you're really going to be able to tap into. Like you can connect people's souls together and let them communicate. Like that is your ability.
Like that.
So that's what you're going to go and do. And I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
How do I do that? What? I'm sorry. What? Like I didn't have years of like spirituality around me already to like get ready for that kind of thing. It was kind of like a whoop. And I was like,
Oh, I can
hey.
relate on that. But it's funny because I have like a similar, I received some big messages this year too. And it was like very much the same sort of idea. It's like you have this unique purpose and you're doing it. And it's like the thing that came through for me has been like all of my lifetimes of experience have culminated to this point where I now actually have the power to bring all that I've learned together. It's like no big deal. Just like, you know, however many hundreds of thousands of incarnations coming into one, but now I have the awareness of it, which I didn't necessarily have before. But I feel similar, like when you say like to bring souls together to communicate, like I feel like that is in a sense what I have done because I've noticed like maybe different, like obviously like we have our unique purposes, but like even through the group, there's people I've connected with and then find out that we have some other connection. And like my really good friend who joined me at the beginning of my spiritual journey, which was like in June where I got like rocketed into all this shit with spirits and stuff in my house and everything. She then had like a house spirit. And she was like, yeah, sometimes he's not here. And then I was like, pretty sure he's here. And then she's like, oh, so now he just lives with me. But through that, like the connections you're talking about is what's really coming for me, because through this, I discovered that him and I were like romantically involved in a past life. And there's a reason he's come back to help me now. And like, I had a spirit living with me for a very long time, a child. And then I got my engagement ring, which I'm no longer engaged, but I read into that and connected with the spirit attached to the ring. And I am fairly certain from the messages that the child who had been living with me was her son. And they both somehow come to me from very different places. And this is like way back. And then my friend, the one who this is all connected through, like we were doing a Yule ritual and, our joint spirit family came to visit us, basically saying that like we have access to the records And the way I interpret it is we have access to the Akashic records for the union of our souls, like through all these lifetimes. So I can like access, if it's like a Venn diagram, like I can access the middle point for both of us by going in. And we've apparently lived all of them together and like dabbled in all forms of spirituality. And we each take roles as leader in different ones. Like it's just wild. Like all these things are coming together now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like.
Right? All of
It's
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. And she told me a similar thing. She was like, like you chose to come back right now in 2020 and do this. Like the piece of your divine soul consciously chose to come down and embody your body now for this purpose. And I just like, okay, yeah,
You're
got
like,
it.
what if I don't wanna? No, I'm kidding.
What if I don't know how, am scared, don't I like,
Yeah,
and she was like, no, you're fine. You're gonna know. She was
mhm.
like, you're gonna know exactly how to do it. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so like at that point I didn't even, no one in my personal circles, not spiritual, um, was even ready to have that conversation with me.
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, I just had like even my wife, like my wife is not spiritual in any way.
I'm really glad you
And
joined the Facebook group.
yes. For sure. Even though I kind of just lurk, but I really like
That's
it.
okay.
Um
That's okay. That's
I
engaging. Yeah.
I told her and she was just like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Well, I just had my mind blown and I'm dying with all this information like." And my best friend is not either. And so she was like, "Well, I guess it's cool that she gave you a business plan. That's something you can work with." And I was like,
Sure.
"Yeah, except what?"
How do you asking like, 'cause I think that's actually a really important point to like pull on is how has it been for you having like people in your life who aren't entirely supportive or on board with the spiritual stuff? Because like I know for me, um, like my former partner, I think for like their own reasons of healing that needed to happen, was really resistant, but like to the point that they became dismissive when I brought any of it up. Like when I'd first mentioned the records and I was interested in Reiki and I was talking about maybe doing it like professionally at some point, and like I do record readings now. Reiki, I'm still not certified, but I'm still contemplating it. They were like, well, go for it if it makes you money, but like I think you're scamming people, like straight up. And it's really hurtful. Like because the way I see it is like if something is helping someone so much, like how could you just discount it like that, right? And like
Mhm.
regardless of what it is, I mean, you don't have to agree with organized religion to say that in some cases it has helped people through difficult things. Like, you know, um whereas like now I'm dating someone who isn't resistant. They acknowledge like I haven't had that experience, so I can't comment, but like they will listen, they will support, they will all the things. And like even coming back from our recent trip, I mentioned that like my house was, I think this is how the conversation went. Like I mentioned that my house was in order and like has been quiet. And he was like the guy I'm seeing was like, oh, it was Steven keeping it organized for you? And Steven's my house spirit. So like in conversation, this person is referencing my house spirit, even though in their mind, because they haven't experienced this, it's like this sounds totally weird, but they know it's my truth and they see that and they show up for it and let me show up for it. You know what I mean? And it's just
Mhm.
like night and day, like the difference in
Mhm.
those experiences. And I just know for myself, I don't think I realized until I transitioned out of that past relationship just how really hurtful actually it could be when people would dismiss those experiences and those insights I was having, not just to my personal growth, but like to my ability to just exist. Like it was painful to exist in those relationships and I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah. Um, yes. And that is why I will not broach the subject with my mom at all.
Mhm.
Because I know it would get to a very hurtful place very quickly. Um, and I didn't need to specifically know that spirituality would do that. I mean, me coming out as gay did that plenty.
Yeah.
Um, we went from best friends to
Mm,
not talking at all. And that was a very hard time of my life.
mhm.
So that's why I don't broach it with her. But I will say, you know, at first my wife was kind of like that. You know, she was kind of like, that stuff sounds kind of weird.
Which it does
Um,
if you're not living
it
it.
does. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Law of attraction sounds bizarre, like, you know, but
I had
at
a
first
past
she was
life in
kind of
Egypt, don't you know? Okay. Yeah.
right, right. But I will say, like, as I've just continued to be authentic and owning my own journey, she has, I don't want to say more open, but just like more respectful doesn't sound right either. But like when I, because I've had a lot of challenging times recently, like going through all of this, because I'm working on my own shadow work and trying to like,
It's a lot.
and it's a lot, yeah. And so I've had a lot of what I call spiritual tantrums recently. Um, and as I go through them, and like December was a really hard time for me, especially with all of the astrology, because I am a Capricorn rising. And so all of it was happening in Capricorn. And I was just like, I'm not used to this. I can't like I was just going through it, and I'm going through a wealth deprogramming like deconditioning program right now too, which is extremely intensive, and it has emotional
That's
clearing and all this stuff.
yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You can give
Um
me details after. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It is the best. She's the best in my opinion. But so I'm doing that, and I'm trying to do this, and we were trying to move, and so through that, like there were a lot of times where I was just like crying to her, and I was like, I'm so sorry that I did this to you, you know, like I quit my job, like I was the breadwinner in my house.
Mhm.
With that retail job, you know, I was making good money, like I wasn't, and you know, I went from nothing, and you
Mhm.
know, just like, I'm so sorry, like I don't know what I'm doing, and she'd be like, you need to talk to the universe, you need to ask the universe, like, you know, and like her kind of like reflecting back to me, you know, my own beliefs even. And I feel like if you looked at it on the surface, you'd be like, oh, that's condescending. But like as a person who's married and been with this person for 5 years, like to me, that is the height of respect and love, that she does not believe in these things, but she's willing to use them with me in a way to comfort me, like to use them to comfort me, you know?
But I think the
Um,
boundary with that is important too. Like to me, it sounds really healthy to be like, okay, like go to the place where you find truth and not her taking on stuff to fix that's not hers to fix. And
mhm.
that's also just like healthy love, in my opinion. So I think that's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And my best friend too, like she, I guess I would say she's a little less, but at the same time, she's still 100% supportive, you know, do what you want to do. Like, I'm not here to stop you or say anything negative about it. Um, so I got, you know, I got very, very lucky with both of them, that even though they don't share my beliefs and they don't get it whatsoever, they're still able to be supportive. Um,
Yeah.
in a way that is enough, you know, enough to get me through. Would it still be wonderful to have uber spiritual friends? Yes.
You have
But
us.
I do. But you know, on the daily, you know, those people that you text and talk to and all of that stuff. So I'm still working through all of that, but it's getting a lot easier, and especially as I've been emotionally clearing things and all of that. It's been a big healing journey
Mhm.
in the last 5-ish months, 4-ish months since I quit my job.
Mhm.
Because I had so much toxicity from that job that I was carrying with me. I was in that job, I was like 99% masculine, like all the time, you know, because when
I
you're
get
running a
it.
business, like you run in that
I work
energy
in
all the time.
insurance. So like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in sales, like it's just hard, you know. And then I mean, I was working for a Fortune 500 company, and I was, you know, running a multi-million dollar store. So like there were expectations, there were things, you know, and I didn't get to run my own store because I wasn't killing it when I was also an assistant general manager. And I picked up so many bad habits
Mm.
and toxic work habits from that I needed to detox and lose and like work through. Um, so it's been a big healing journey in the past couple of months of like coming through that, because I think I wanted to jump straight into coaching and do all that stuff, but like the reality was
Yeah.
I had some things that I needed to heal. Like I needed to find good work life balance. Like
Mhm.
I need to find good, healing, like good self-care and everything, because in that job, the ability to work 90 hours a week is like, just don't mention it to your higher level boss and it's fine. Like, just go ahead. It's fine. People calling you at 2 in the morning with issues, it's fine. Um, so there was just so much toxicity that needed to be like leached out and like just go.
Can relate on a lot of that actually, because that was a big part of my last, I mean, couple of years. If we go back to, I started working overtime because someone left our company, they went on a leave, and I took over their block, but not much of my block shifted, and I had the overtime approved. So I was like, okay. And at the time I was saving up, at a certain point of it, at least I began saving up for a wedding. So I was like, well, I'll do the overtime for this period of time and then it'll be done. It's fine. But that meant working 110 hours over a biweekly period. We're supposed to do 76 for frame of reference. I was also trying to run my coaching business, have my YouTube channel, have a podcast, do the social media stuff. In that time, I like studied for an exam for work. Like I ran myself into the ground. So similar to what you're talking about there, without having that balance. But I also think for myself, I did that so that I wouldn't have the space to do that personal work you're talking about, to do the shadow work, to do the healing, to do the reflecting, because I was fucking terrified. Like it was that I'd been holding everything. And even with like getting sober, I did some of the work, but like not to the extent that I am now. And I've been like, since a kid, holding everything together, just like shaking under the weight of the world. And I had to get to a point where I could just let it fall apart. And my engagement ending, whatever you want to say with that breakup was that point. It wasn't necessarily that wasn't like the biggest catastrophic thing. Like really,
Right.
I settled around that specific thing pretty quickly, but it was a catalyst. And even my
For
guy,
everything else.
the Monday after, I went into my records and they were like, this is the loss you needed to finally process all the other ones. And so it really was about creating that space to heal and just be. And like, for me, that actually meant like taking down all my business stuff, deactivating my Instagram, all of that. And I had just created the Facebook group tied to my podcast. That's what it was supposed to be. And then I got the message to end it all. So I channeled the name of the Facebook group. I channeled what it was meant to be from my guides. Um, and I took down I did a final episode of the podcast where it sounds like I'm like tripping balls on acid because I'm going on this like spiritual woo thing. And I think I was just channeling information. I've never done acid for the record. And it was just like super weird. Like if you listen to it, it's just like flow state like the whole time. And my voice changes. Like it's really interesting. And I just went for it. And like that's where I'm at now, is doing that healing. And like funny thing, because you mentioned this, like right after I did that, 3 people reached out to me for the kind of coaching I'd been doing. And it wasn't like a general query. It was like, hey, like, when can we start? Like, they were pretty adamant they wanted this support. And I had to be like, I'm actually not doing that. And that was a big test, I think, for me. Like, you mentioned a couple for yourself of like, oh, wait, it's spiritual. Like, I'm a spiritual guide, or however you phrase it. And similar, it was like, yeah, that's not what my soul is meant to do. I'll refer you to people, but it's not me. And that was big to create that space for my own healing, right?
For sure. And I think it's funny that you bring up the test too, because um just this past week, like on Wednesday, my old boss and mentor, we were on the phone and she was like, do you want to come back?
Ooh.
Do you want to come back? Not just come back to the company, but do you want to come back to me? And like she's the only one I would come back for.
Yeah.
We would have to go back to that town, and it would be a demotion from what I was doing, but I hated what I was doing. But I kind of was just like, Oh, and like it through all of this, like that's where my wife's family is, and we're extremely close to them, and I've been missing them a lot, especially with the pandemic.
Yeah.
We have a brand new niece over there. She is just the most precious child in the entire world, and we love her, and we talk about her like she's our child, like we joke about it all the time. And so I was like, no, this is stupid. Like, I know I don't need to go back there. But I still mentioned it to my wife, and she was like unequivocally, she was like, no, what are you talking about? We're not doing that. No, no, we're not going backwards. We're only going forwards. And I was like, you're right, you're right, you're right. Like,
Oh, they're
oops, guys.
underdogs. That's beautiful.
Yeah, she was just like, we're not going backwards. There's no future for us there. We already knew that. That's why we left. We're not going back. Okay, we're not. It's not worth it. And I was like, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. But it was kind of like a,
One of
and
those.
it's not like I was all in for it, but there was that tiny piece in the back of my head that
Oh, yeah.
wants to run away and was like, oh, this is perfect. Like I can just undo my mistake.
Well, I had that moment too where it was like with those people, it's like, oh, okay. Like I could do it. I could do it. But that's fear, right? And I always say like
Yeah.
fear can either guide you to the truth or distract you from it. And in those moments where it's like that, maybe yes, it's like that's it as a distraction. But when I said no to that, like it kind of funneled me to exactly what I needed to do. And it's interesting when you allow that to happen, like not saying everything becomes lollipops and rainbows, but I think the next step you need to take becomes a lot easier, at least for myself. That's how it's kind of been.
Yeah, for sure. And
Okay.
I think it's funny that you say that because as soon as that happened, I had a conversation with someone about soul, like what I can do, what I do personally, what I have been told I'm going to do, this soul guide work.
Yeah.
Had a conversation with her, and I was just kind of like, it is what it is. And she was like, no, that's amazing. I want to do that. Like, let's do it. Like, and it happened. It's one of those
Yeah.
universe divine things.
Mhm.
And uh and it started dropping in, and I knew what I needed to do for her.
Yeah.
Um and the universe was quite adamant, and I think it's funny because there's been so many things, like I've kind of through everything I was kind of trying to run away,
Mhm.
and through the move and everything, and like the beginning of January and the end of December, like that was a really tough time, just
Mhm.
mentally and emotionally, and I'm still kind of like coming out of that a little bit.
For sure.
um and so I was kind of like, I'll just go back to the workforce, like I'm just going to go back to the workforce, like there's no, and like, but I even went as far as to fill out an application for somewhere, and then like they were talking about the description of the job, and I was like, this is not right. Like I can't do this. Like, no, that sounds horrible. That sounds soul sucking. I don't want to do that. Like, And then I had this conversation with her, and really, like, had a conversation with myself afterwards of like, you've been running away from this, like you really need to stop doing that, like you need to face this, like I know you don't want to, and it's scary and it's big and it's something you've never done before, but like you really should readdress it and like go back. And then um yesterday I everything dropped in, and I was like, oh, okay, like I was getting,
Yeah.
I'm still learning about like all the clairs and all of that stuff. But like when I get divinely channeled, I either hear it in my head or I see it, like I see the visual of the words or whatever message or communication. It's interesting.
And those can be
Um,
different things too. I get confused about that because like that I would say is like clairvoyance, right? When you have like a vivid image, but when you hear it, like that can be clairaudience, but it can also be claircognizance. It can also be that you're interpreting clairsentience as words. So it really, I feel, is just like the big message I've been getting this year, and it makes sense with how I have always approached things, like even when I was doing my coaching, is that like we're so quick to reach for the ethereal that we discount the necessary role the physical body plays in interpreting the soul's information. And like your body will tell you, right? Like your physical body will tell you where those messages are coming from and how they're coming through. Um, And like the
Mhm.
labels are interesting. And that's just, it's an interesting thing to learn what's being,
Right. It's
but at the end of the day, it's there. Like trust it, right? Like that's the message.
right.
But
Right.
yeah, anyway, that just reminded me of that. So I thought I'd share. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And you know, at first I wasn't even like the first time it happened, I didn't even know about the whole Claire's, like all of them. I didn't know about any of them. So I just thought it was like an internal knowing. Like that's what I was calling it. Is like it's just an internal knowing. Um and I still kind of see it that way, but it was interesting yesterday because I got to experience a different version
Mm.
of it. So I had the divine channeling of what I needed to do specifically for this lady, what needed to happen, what it needed to look like, everything that I needed to do. And then it was really funny because it was my first experience talking to another person's spirit guides. That had never happened to me before.
Well, isn't it
And I felt
fun?
it was so fun. I told her, I told her, I said, your spirit guides are the funniest people I've ever met in my life. Like they're hilarious. Like they were just chattering and
Yeah.
it was
When I was
wonderful.
those readings for the group, there was a couple people where I was in my records and I bounced into theirs. And it happens. Like if the intent is there, it'll happen. And whatever, I check back out. I can't remember if it was you. I kind of feel like it might have been. So I like accidentally talk with other people's spirit guides, but yeah, anyway. It's a cool thing to like, and I think when you can trust it, it reaffirms your connection, right? Because it's you
For sure.
into what's different and it's like, oh, okay, like this makes sense. Yeah.
For sure. It was amazing. It was like it was that nudging. It was like, okay, now you need to tell her that you got the information because I had just told her like, hey, let's do this, let's schedule something, but we didn't do it right then. And so yesterday it was like, no, do it now, do it now. So I went ahead, I messaged her, I said, hey, I just got this, like, hey, let's set something up. I figured it'd be like weeks away, because she's very busy
No,
and then she was like, let's do it tonight. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't have time to get nervous. Like, I don't have time to get nervous and like overthink all of this. Like, okay, whatever. And then her spirit guides came to me after she read the message and they were just telling me, like, she needs this and da 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 da. Like, they were just talking to me. And like, I told her, I was like, hey, did you know that your spirit guides are New Yorkers? She's like, that makes so much sense. And I was like, yeah, they're New Yorkers. They cussed a lot and it was hilarious.
one of mine showed up as a Viking. It's in one of the episodes. We mentioned it, the one with Zach. And I think it's episode 15, if I remember, but I'm not positive. And my guy showed up as a Viking in New Balance sneakers, like twirling a phone cord, like waiting for me to answer. And I just found that so fucking funny. And it's like
That is hilarious.
so accurate to my existence that it's just like it made so much sense. Yeah.
That is amazing.
I know, right?
See, and spirit guides is something that I have been wanting to dive more into, but the only one that I'm pretty sure that I have is my grandmother.
I heard a lot of people say that actually, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because she died when I was 3. And my mother had a very difficult relationship with her. So growing up, never really knew much about her at all. I kind of just felt like she was there. And then this year, after I decided that I was pretty sure she's always with me and is one of my spirit guides, information about her has been coming up just like naturally. And my mom has started talking about her more. And like I'm finding out that, she was a pretty spiritual person and she was actually in correspondence school to become a healer. Like she wanted to become a naturopathic healer.
Okay.
And my mom told me that right after I told her that I am considering doing that. And she was like, that's funny. And then my mom told me too that she's thinking about becoming a healer. She wants to become a herbal healer. And so it's just like more information has been coming through about her.
Cool.
But in high school, I believe my grandfather, and they were divorced, but my grandfather had mentioned that I was a lot like my grandmother. I had a lot of her spirit. And so it was just, she's the only one that I'm.
Yeah.
for sure about, like, I'm pretty sure. But I thought it was so funny. I told her to the lady that I was doing this channeling for, I was like, you know, my spirit guides are probably laughing at me right now because I can talk to yours no problem, but I'm
That's
over.
It's not abnormal though, because it is a lot harder to trust when we've had that internal dialogue going to discern what's what. And whereas for someone else, like it can come through so like I did a live reading, which I don't normally do. My readings are all transcribed. It's just how I work. Like, and I just go with it, right? I don't people are like, do you think you'll ever? I was like, maybe, but like I also don't think one is better than the other. It's just about showing up for how you best receive information to best relay it to that person who needs it, right? Um, and I was doing a live one for my friend Renita, who's in the group and has been on the channel as well. And her guides rhymed. And I've had this happen for a couple of people where their guides rhymed at me. And it was so funny because I was like, I do not do limericks. Like, what is happening here? And they're like kind of sing song things and little moments like that. But hearing mine, it took more to trust it because it's also easy, I think, to conflate it with yeah, like your internal voice. But the thing I've been told to really pay attention to is the flip from you to I. So like I will come up a lot in like my free writing if I'm just journaling on something, but sometimes at a certain point it'll switch to you, like it's talking to me. And I don't think I ever noticed that before. And I think that voice, the voices that I hear, um, I had attributed them to like a higher power. And I think in a sense they are, right? Because we all get to decide what that is for us. But I had thought more like, oh, I'm going to go talk to God, not like a religious God, but like God, like whatever.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, those are my guides. Okay. Like, but I think that's really exciting that you're tapping into that. Cause like, I mean, it started not that long ago for me, but once it starts, at least in my experience, it snowballs.
Oh, I hope so because, I mentioned, those jobs felt like, and then this felt like perfect. Like this felt energizing and this felt like, oh, I need more of this. Like I want more of this,
that's
you know?
That's how I feel in the group. Honestly, when I see people engaging and when I am doing readings for people and even like these recordings, like this stuff makes me happy. And I think that, not everything's like I always say, not everything is going to be super exciting, super whatever all the time. Cause like that would eventually become underwhelming because we'd be overstimulated too much.
Right.
But I think it's important to recognize when those things are there that do light you up and that give you motivation to keep going and like create that spark. And I don't know, I'm excited that you're having it and trusting it and leaning in. And I'm excited to see how that goes for you. Like now that you're in the space and we're, more connected and all of that. And like, yeah, that's awesome.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all the aspects of your journey because I think it honestly is so important. Like, because they are so nuanced and so individual and um, learning how each person begins to kind of accept their purpose and step into it and move forward and there's no right or wrong way but like each is really beautiful, so like thank you for being open and sharing your experience.
Yeah, for sure. I'm one of those people, like, I'm always just, like, blatantly honest and, like, upfront, like, authenticity is the highest thing to me, the highest value, so even if it's messy and a hot mess express, then it is what it is, it's
Oh,
so.
I have 24/7 a hot mess. Don't even worry about it, my friend. Yeah, but no, this has been amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat and for being open to this. Um,
Yeah, for sure, thank you for having me, I was very excited.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.